This week on TGC News, we've got gun industry news, new gun accessories, and new guns you will not want to miss. Welcome back to another episode of the Gun Collective News. I'm John Patton, and I just want you guys to know that I'm incredibly thankful that you are around, that any of you watch. Those of you that are subscribed, I will say I love you a little bit more than those that aren't. Get subscribed, you little... Now, the news. We'll start with the background check numbers because July's info just got released. Last month, there were 2.1 million background checks. This is actually up from last year by about 85K, and it's also a slight trend upward from June by about 55K. It is an election year, so that sort of makes sense. With Brown Fran Drescher facing off against Old Red Ear, it's very likely that things will start to get spicier as the months get closer to November. In legal news, a federal district court judge has vacated the forced reset trigger case, which is what I am going to call a small victory. I say that because ATF has already appealed the decision and will continue being a pile of ripe summer garbage. Despite what those who would financially benefit from the sale of these triggers might tell you, it's not a done deal, so be cautious with your wallet for now. You know where you probably don't need to be cautious with your wallet? The products from this week's sponsor, Infiray Outdoor. Infiray Outdoor offers some of the best thermal imaging devices around. Whether you're looking for something handheld that won't break the bank like the AFO, which is under $1,000, or perhaps something to go on your rifle like the rugged infrared compact optic, aka the Rico, or maybe something flat out amazing like the M6 with its built-in rangefinder and 360-degree movement to mount on your freaking vehicle. That is so cool. They've got you covered. From security to household use to hunting and everything in between, Infiray Outdoor has something for everyone. Big thanks to Infiray Outdoor for sponsoring this week's video. In accessory news this week, we've got a few things. First is from a brand from my home state of PA called Shaw Barrels. The thing that makes this one unique is that instead of a carbon wrap to achieve a lighter weight, this one is wrapped in a fluted titanium sleeve. I was told by Shaw that they are usually lighter weight and manage heat better than a carbon wrapped barrel. Their initial offering is for the 1022 and weighs in at just under 1.5 pounds. 1.45 for the 18-inch and 1.35 for the 16.5-inch. MSRP on these is $350. I've also been told that they are moving into the bolt-action barrel arena next, so I'm really curious how accurate these are and how well they will handle the summer heat. Most barrels, most out there, open up groups pretty noticeably when they start to get hot, so we shall see if these are any different. Next up in accessory news is a series of suppressors from B&T USA. They call them their Print X Rotex line, and on launch there are 10 different models in either 7.62 or 5.56 bore diameters with compact and full-size offerings in titanium and non-titanium version, among others. They all feature what B&T calls the SRBS or Slim Reduced Back Pressure System and are completely 3D printed from either titanium, like I mentioned, or 718 Inconel. They're all hub mount compatible and just freaking fancy overall. Weights range from 8 ounces, which is like nothing, up to just under 16. I love the fact that most suppressor brands out there are realizing and releasing or heavily looking at reduced back pressure. It seems like they've sort of had that aha moment that sound matters, but shooting experience also matters to the end user. B&T doesn't list MSRP on these cans, so I don't know, just make it up in the comments. Who cares? They're going to be expensive. Also, in fancy suppressor news, speaking of expensive, Dead Air has a big bore can that I've yet to cover called the Nomax 33. They claim it's big bore done differently. And that means it's one of the lightest and shortest big bore cans out there at 15.4 ounces and just 9.6 inches long. Now, when we say big bore, that's essentially anything over 30 cal. That's kind of lumped all together. And this one happens to have a bore suitable for .338 Lapua or 8.6 Blackout. This one is also hub compatible, so you can swap out the back end, and it's also 3D printed out of titanium. The MSRP here is $12.99, which, like I said, is not cheap, and it seems like none of the 3D printed cans are. Like, there's not a single cheap 3D printed can that I'm aware of, at least in metal 3D printing. Moving on from there, we've got a bunch of new guns to cover this week. First is from NULA, aka New Ultralight Arms Company. They were actually acquired by Wilson Combat not so long ago, so basically this is a bolt-action Wilson Combat. The rifle is called the Model 20S. This is a mini-action version of their full-size Model 20. That means it's chambered for 223 Wild, 300 Hammer, 300 Blackout, and 350 Legend. They can be had with a 16 or 18-inch barrel, depending on the cartridge, and have a Timney Elite Hunter trigger. All of them also carry a sub-MOA guarantee using match ammo. They all come with a carbon fiber stock and a light contour on the stainless barrel, and generally that means they're gonna be light. As an example, the 16-inch 350 Legend is 4 pounds 13 ounces. The kicker with all of this is the MSRP of 3 Gs. I love mini-action rifles, but holy that is not cheap. Let's switch it up a little bit here. We're going to cover a handgun next. Springfield announced a comped version of the Prodigy. Essentially, they moved the front sight rearward and cut a big old port in the slide and barrel to allow gases to come up for better follow-up shots and overall control. Honestly, that sounds fantastic to me because I had a really positive experience with the gun that we reviewed. Josh bought one and it was great. Link below for that video, but I have heard that not everyone had that same experience, so I hope that they've now that the gun's been out a while, they've worked all that stuff out, and the ported version is going to be good to go, we hope. MSRP on the comped Prodigy is $15.99, which is about $100 more than the standard version. Speaking of 2011 style pistols, there's yet another new one on the market. This time from a company called Vulcan Machine Works. It's called the 11, but they use 3s instead of E's so that you know that they're hip. This is another take on the 5-inch double-stack 1911 that has become very popular this year. They tell me that these are all hand-fit and blah, 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 blah. They're fancy. Same stuff as we've heard from a bunch of brands. You have an aggressive aluminum grip and a way less aggressive texture on the slide itself. There are serrations on the slide, but they're sort of reducing in size as you get towards the rear of the gun. Otherwise, it's pretty much just a really blocky looking slide, except for the top, which has a series of ports, again, to control felt recoil and muzzle rise. They offer it with 7 different optic cuts, and they're all permanent. There is no swapping plates or anything like that. Once you pick one, that's it. You can get it non-ported also, but I don't know why you would ever do that. MSRP here is $4,500. I did get a chance to actually shoot one of these at the Guns Out TV range day this past weekend, and it shoots great. Like, it shoots really well, but it should for that kind of money. They asked me for feedback on the gun, and I'll tell you, I told them, I said, the slide looks unfinished, and the price is just way too high. One of the engineers on the project told me that's because they aren't a big company and they can't afford to buy big batches of parts and things like that. Like, it costs them a lot of money to make, so I don't know. To me, there's nothing truly unique about the gun that makes it worth that high price, but that doesn't make it a bad gun. Moving on from there, CMMG released the Descent Mark III. This is essentially their larger action version of the Descent and can be had in 308, 6.5 Creedmoor, or 8.6 Blackout. They're doing 3 barrel lengths, 12.5, 16, or 20-inch. They also have that same enclosed recoil system of the smaller Descents that allows you to run a pick rail mounted thing on the rear of the gun. They just have like that pick rail on the back instead of a buffer tube. MSRP here ranges from $2,050 up to $2,300 depending on configuration. And I'm curious to know how many of you guys are hyped on CMMG guns these days. Has that like sort of worn off with this Descent, or are you still excited about it? Are you interested? Do you not care? Sound off in the comments. I'll keep doing this sort of thing for a second. And next up is a gun. Well, let's talk about it first. It's from Bear Creek Arsenal, and it's part of their BC-10 lineup, sort of AR-10 lineup. They've released them now in 8.6 Blackout. This episode has a few mentions of that cartridge. The new ones are pistol configurations, 7.5, 10.5, and 12.5 inch barrels, all with an MSRP of $995. Now, the reason I think this gun is important and why I'm talking about it is because it's cheap by comparison. Almost every other 8.6 that I can think of is more shekels. And this low end could mean that there's more demand from a wider variety of customers, and that could potentially drive ammo availability in a favorable direction. If there are more people needing ammo and wanting ammo, and some of them aren't necessarily rich and can't afford current 8.6 blackout prices, that could be a good thing, I hope. Given that it's BCA, I think it will be bordering on junk quality because that's sort of their MO. But I think for the market as a whole, it matters and it could be a good thing. And before we go, I'm going to share a new one from Vertex. They are a sponsor of the channel, and they've just released a bunch of their bags in multicam black. I use their bags every single day, and I know a bunch of people love black multicam. So I figured I'd share it with you guys. If you don't have a Vertex bag, you need to change that. They're great. There's a link down in the description for you guys to check out. I don't think we have a discount for this one because they're a limited run, but that is a tracking link. So if you use it, they will know that you watched TGC, and that will be awesome. So thank you if you do that. Again, there's a link below to those new multicam black bags. Go get one.